The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media.
The attempt to extradite and prosecute Julian Assange, and he's already been indicted, is a direct assault on the freedom of the press, on the First Amendment, and on journalism here in general. It's the very first prosecution of a journalist for doing journalism, criminalizing journalism, in effect, in this country, in blatant violation of the First Amendment. My case, many years ago, was the first prosecution of anyone as a whistleblower for leaking information, classified information, to the public. There have been many leaks before, but no prosecutions, precisely because of the First Amendment, which obviously forbade such prosecutions. So my prosecution was an experiment to see whether some law, in this case the Espionage Act, so-called Espionage Act, could be used against the non-espionage defendant. I wasn't claimed to be a spy. It was recognized that I was a source. In fact, they knew, acting out of patriotic motives, to give information to the public that the government did not want out. It revealed violations of treaties, revealed decades of lying to the American public, and of secret threats that had increasingly escalated a wrongful, hopeless, murderous war. Like, for example, the war that we have waged on Iraq for many years now. I don't think any of those wars would have come about had there been whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning or Ed Snowden, both of whom were facilitated by Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. If the public and the Congress had been told about the planning, the threats, the lies involved in those operations, I think that what amount to millions of people ultimately would have lived, would have had their lives spared. The point here is that for many years, whistleblowers have been essentially needed if we were to avert both unconstitutional and terrible, wrongful wars. Julian Assange set up WikiLeaks in order to facilitate whistleblowers, to facilitate, publish, really, information that governments were wrongly withholding from their public, and that was needed by the public, and he did so. I actually stood at his side in a press conference in 2010 when he revealed the so-called Iraq war logs. Thousands of pages, we know now, were supplied by Chelsea Manning about many illegalities, including torture. So a number of governments, Britain, which was a very cooperative partner in this coalition of the willing in aggression against Iraq, it revealed crimes, actually. Not only in the, it wasn't high enough level in the decision making to reveal how we got into Iraq, but what we were doing when we were there, which involved death squads, assassinations, and torture, widespread torture, was something that our government did not want known. It was a clear revelation of war crimes. And so it was kept classified.
Draw a parallel between your experience as a whistleblower, the New York Times as a publisher, and today with WikiLeaks.
Thanks to a memoir by Jim Goodale, the then counsel of the New York Times during the Pentagon Papers adjudication, the attempt to censor the press, actually the first time that there was an effort actually to, a prior restraint that would have an injunction against the publication of anything, but in this case, the Pentagon Papers. He revealed that he had known at that time that Nixon, President Nixon, had impaneled a grand jury that was pursuing the prosecution of New York Times journalists like Neil Sheehan and Hedrick Smith. That was very little known up until quite recently, and apparently their lawyer at that time had told Goodale that he fully expected them to be indicted. That would have been the first indictment of a journalist. Now, almost half a century later, Julian Assange is now the first to have actually been indicted as a journalist on this case. And that will mean essentially that we won't have a free press. The public will know essentially what the government chooses to tell them, however untrue and however selective and misleading about its own operations. It's hard to call that a democratic republic. And that's where we're on the verge of achieving right now. The Espionage Act has been an abuse of law continuously since my prosecution, been used against a number of other people, in particular by President Obama, and now by President Trump as many times as in 2 years, 3 years, as Obama in 8 years. This new case it would be hard even for this Supreme Court, I think, to see it as other than a violation of the First Amendment. And yet the prosecution itself, even if it fails, is meant to be and probably would be an effective deterrent to investigative reporting in the national security field. So much depends then on preventing or stopping this extradition or prosecution or conviction of Julian Assange.